listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me?
Yeah.
Famous?
Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Can't get enough baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to weigh mine for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
Pitch and Moan, episode 5. I'm your host, Courtney Finnicum, of course, with my favorite, my co-host, Jonny Gomes. How are you?
Right on schedule. Post deadline, a lot of action, a lot of hope. Right? I think there's a lot of hope. That's my adjective for this. There's a lot of hope. I mean, we didn't see that big bat. We didn't see that Cy Young. We didn't see that. So we're hoping for these bullpen arms. We're hoping for those dudes that went to Seattle. So we can go ahead and dive into it. But yeah, a lot of hope.
And I like that. That is actually a perfect way to start because this is all about hope, right? We have so many teams that are technically alive in the playoff hunt, right? Because of this wild card situation. The NL wild card is bunched up with 5, 6, even 7 teams sometimes ready to make the first big jump into really solidifying themselves as a playoff team. So this is an exciting time. This is officially the dog days of summer. It's August. Trade deadline's passed. All-Star game is passed. Now it's time to get serious. So here we are. Got to break down the deadline and all the craziness that happened. Yep. And a couple of quick call-outs because this was a unique market. This was a seller's market, which was cool to see because that gave teams an aggressive approach with making deals, as we saw. For instance, we saw 29 relievers change teams this deadline. So tells me that teams are getting serious about realizing what they need to do to win, and that starts with a solid bullpen. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'll tell you what it is with all these arms getting moved, this is like wild analytically driven, right? Yep. You're seeing all these teams like, okay, we want this guy to throw his cutter more. We want this guy to throw his changeup more. He's sitting at a 5 ERA, but if he comes over to us and he buys into our system, obviously what Bailey's doing up there in Boston, throwing all this off speed, right? You go over to St. Louis, and it's just this analytically driven deal where there's only 30 organizations and there's 30 different models of how to pitch, which is wild. But yeah, man, I mean, these bean counters and these number guys went wild with the bullpen. Absolutely.
They did. And I feel like you know a little bit about the bullpen and how important that is, considering your Royals team had, that nasty 3-headed monster for, during that entire World Series and playoff run. So, in order to win, you got to have a knockdown bullpen. So I think teams are realizing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, but then on the other side, you can't win a 0-0 ball game, right? You got to touch the dish more than the other team. And where it stands right now, so like what Seattle did, right? So they got 2 bats, but they got 2 bats hitting under 230. I think if Rosarina and Justin can give you like a 255, 260 with let's say 5 to 8 homers the rest of the way, Seattle's right in the middle of the mix. But if they don't, they are absolutely not.
And that is where the hope comes in, right? Because you have the Seattle team with some of the best pitching in the game, if not the best pitching in the game. But like you said, you can't win no-score ball games. So I like the Seattle moves because this is not only do they need offense, but they needed a boost in that lineup in general. That lineup, unfortunately, has a lot of guys that play very similarly. They needed that flash. They needed that excitement that a Rosarina brings. And I also feel like Justin Turner, he's been there, done that. He's a veteran presence. You need that when you're going up against teams like Houston because Houston's there and they are not going away, right? So these are important moves that Seattle needed to make. And I'm glad that they stepped up and they did that because just on optics alone, a Rosarina will give them that spark that they need.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of hope going on. Obviously, Miami mailed it in as they should.
As they should.
As they should. Proud of them. keep knowing, blow the whole damn thing up, like that's how it needs to get blown up. It does. Sometimes you just got to look in the mirror and be like, yep, let's get rid of, what'd they get rid of, like 6 guys and got like 15 or something in return.
I believe
Beautiful.
it was 13 prospects. So that's a haul. That is a good haul.
Yep.
Now, again, we both know prospects are prospects at the end of the day, right? They obviously have to step up. They got to make it to the show and they got to be able to perform at that level.
Yep.
So again, that's where the hope comes in. That's our word of the day.
Yep.
Another team on the other side of Florida that did something very similar was Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Now, you know this team and this organization well. This is not their first rodeo. But I give them credit for pulling the trigger on guys that are not going to be there long term. You had to do that. This was smart moves.
Yep.
So I think Tampa, again, just like their neighbors, the Marlins, I think they did the right thing at this deadline for sure.
Yeah, and it's like you look at actually the pieces they kept, right? Like this Bradley kid, this CJ Bradley. I mean, he's on the American Cy Young, odds.
Yep.
He's up there. Fairbanks is probably one of the best relievers in the game. So they kept those guys, right? And let's go ahead and build around them. They got control over them for a while. It's wild. The AL East is the cream of the crop, especially with Baltimore being back in there. And we'll see what happens with Toronto. But yeah, I like what they did, and there's some talks about a new stadium. But there was some talks. I saw a report where a potential sell of the team. I don't know about all that, but Tampa's always going to be in the fight, man. They're always going to have good pitching.
They are. And that is, like you said, the AL East is certainly a division to pay attention to moving forward in these last 2 months, because not only do you have Baltimore, but you have the Yankees and you have Boston. Boston's right there. And Boston made some interesting moves too, getting Quinn, from I believe it was Miami, correct?
Yep.
And, these are moves that could help you in the long run. And a team that, again, we talked about Toronto being similar to Tampa in getting rid of guys that were not there, that are not going to be in the future moving forward. I think Toronto did a nice job with this as well. And I like the fact that they did not trade Vlad Guerrero and Bichette. I think that's nice.
Yeah, as a selfish baseball guy, I'd love for him to go somewhere. But that dude's got economic impact. I mean, you go up there, that place is riddled in Vlad jerseys, right? Yep. This isn't just getting rid of a bat. And but he was getting hot down the trade deadline. He was hitting those Oppo homers in Baltimore. I was like, if there's a time to get this guy, it would be now.
Yep.
But I'm okay with Toronto keeping him for sure. I mean, this guy is a dude.
And I would imagine, I've been on the other side of this. We all have as fans, where you lose, basically the face of your team at that point. And it's like, baseball is baseball at the end of the day. I will always love it. I will always love going to games. I don't care what game I go to. As long as there's baseball in front of me, I'm happy.
Yep.
But when you lose that face of your franchise, it's demoralizing, because then, like we talked about, you have to have hope that there's going to be a new face of the franchise, and that could take years. So it's a struggle, and it's tough. So I'm glad Toronto didn't pull that trigger.
Yeah, majority of the time when you do get that face of the organization, it's from within and it's drafted, right? Yeah. So they probably would get a bunch of pieces back from him. But when you have that draft, that homegrown kid, that's when it's the face of your franchise.
Exactly. And I think that does make just a little bit of an added bonus, and it hurts a little bit more when those guys are gone and they're succeeding elsewhere. And I've seen this far too many times here in Chicago, so it's tough.
Huh.
So another team, I have pros and cons with this because unfortunately I am a Sox fan, but another team that really stepped up at the deadline, that gave themselves some nice veteran presence that was much needed, were the St. Louis Cardinals.
Huh.
Literally fleecing the White Sox for Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham was very impressive. I don't know how they got away with doing what they did, but they managed to do it, and that's only going to help them in the long run. That is a team filled with veterans. That's huge.
Yeah, man, I don't know how it works. I haven't been in the trade room when all that goes down, but it seems like they picked on the young GM a little bit there. But you know what? I really like St. Louis. I know they lost last night to the Cubs in a walk-off. And that's the other thing, too, I was going to mention is the teams that are out of it, right? The teams that cut the fat, the teams that did this. There's always those one or two teams that are just going to be dream crushers.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Right? There's that team that like, we're out of it. Who gives a crap? Let's play with our hair on fire and let's absolutely go for it. And if the Cubs want to do that, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, that'd be great for that fan base and all that stuff. But outside of that, I love what St. Louis did. Their starting rotation, Lance Lynn, check his resume. He's getting a whole lot of 2000s, right? He's coming up on
Yes.
2,000 innings. He just got 2,000 punch outs. He just beat all 30 teams. Sonny Gray is a dude. They probably got the second best closer in the game. They got a young buck at shortstop. Tommy Phan's getting thrown in there. And they got Matt's coming back. Matt's coming on. They're going to have a legit starting five down the stretch.
And I do like when you called out that there are teams now that are considered out of it, that could be dream crushers, as you said. And a team that really stands out to me with being that dream crusher are the Oakland A's. And I know how much we both love talking about the Oakland A's because that is a team that if they had an owner that actually invested in that team, they'd be one of the best teams in baseball and one of the most fun to watch. Kotsay has those guys playing extremely hard. They have a crazy good offense. If they had any pitching, they'd be right in the middle of the AL West easily in that division. And I like that Oakland did not, I don't know how much his injury played into this, his last minute injury, unfortunately, how much that Mason Miller injury played into him not being traded. But I just like the optics that they didn't trade him. I think that's nice. I think that's nice for A's fans to see, okay, we still have a stud that we can pay attention to. Brent Rooker as well.
Brett Rooker is smashing the ball.
Smashing the ball.
He is smashing the ball. He's upwards around 300 batting average. Meanwhile, there's only about 10 of them in the big leagues right now, and there's 30 teams. Think about that. 300 is just like a friggin' Sasquatch these days. But yeah, I mean, it's great. And then you even go south of them in the same division, Anaheim.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely lost organization right now. But yeah, there's some hope in Oakland, and I think I'm planning on going out there for what possibly is going to be the last game at the Coliseum.
Now that is fantastic, and you should. That's your childhood team, right?
Yeah,
and you should. You got to be there. Got to say goodbye to the Coliseum.
Yeah.
I love that for you. I think that's going to be a good time. It's gonna
I was thinking if you wanted like a seat from there, it wouldn't be too hard because you could just like pull it up. Like it's not even bolted down. None of them.
And who's gonna refuse anything you do there anyway? Come on. I mean,
so if you want something, it's probably pretty easy to grab off the walls or a seat or whatever. So I might be into that.
Are you bringing kids? Are you bringing your kids with you? What's the plan? What's the day looking like?
I'll probably go solo. Maybe we'll bring the kids, but yeah, I mean that was my first, big league park I ever went to.
Right.
That park changed my life for baseball in the '89 World Series against the Giants in the Earthquake Series.
Yeah.
And then having the opportunity to wear white cleats and play there. So yeah, I got a lot of memories there, and spray champagne on the field in 2012 and 14. So yeah, and the history, right? It's one of two organizations that won 3 straight World Series, and again went to 3 straight in 88, 89, and 90. They got tons of retired numbers. They got Ricky Henderson, all those guys. So there's a lot of history there, and some people are going to be shedding a tear, believe it or not.
Well, and that was going to be my next question for you. I mean, this is your childhood team. Will there be a Jonny Gomes tear being shed on that last day? I got to know.
Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to catch me in the fight. That's where it all started for me. But I'm one of the few. I'm not giving up hope. Like I'm really not, right? Like, I mean, all these signatures and there's so much red tape and like it's crazy. So I'm not giving up hope. My prediction is when they go to SAC is going to rally around that team and sell out every single seat, every single game. 2-3 years, you're going to look up and be like, maybe they should stay there.
And there's a lot of rumblings about that, right? Like nobody really knows if this Vegas thing is really going to be a thing.
Yeah.
But I guess my question for you as a former player, everyone's talking about how hot it gets in Sacramento this time of year, right? And playing on that turf field, and how hot it's going to be, how would that affect you as a player moving forward? Would that be something that you're dreading? Would that be something you kind of embrace? I mean, how would you handle that? Because there's a lot of chatter about that right now.
The hottest places I've ever played in my life was Cincinnati and Atlanta.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah. So that's that's humidity. There's no humidity in California.
That
right?
is true. That is true.
So you're close to the water. So, you're in the big leagues, suck it up. There's hot places freaking everywhere. Yeah.
You're in the big leagues, but you're playing in a minor league stadium, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
it's a little ass backwards, but they'll get it figured out. I'm sure there'll be a ton of night games. But I will be interested to see how, if they really do make a move to Vegas. It'll be interesting. I'm still not convinced it's going to happen, like you said. So.
Yeah.
Another team that I am kind of a little wishy-washy with when it comes to the moves they made in the deadline are the Padres. Now, AJ Preller has given himself this reputation of being just an aggressive maniac, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Win now concept. I'm a little jealous of it. I can't lie, but there are pros and cons to this because Preller gave up not one, not two, not three, but four top prospects for Jason Adam and Tanner Scott. Now, these guys are bona fide studs. Again, relievers, everything that teams need. But man, if this backfires, you are giving up a giant chunk of your future potentially.
Yeah, well, lucky AJ's got like an outstanding scouting department, and they got a ton of dudes down there. They really do. They got a ton of dudes down there, and I think it's wild. And like San Diego rallies around that team. That is officially a baseball city.
Certainly is.
Those 3 games against LA, granted it was against LA, but they'll sell out like a 1:00 on Wednesday.
Literally.
In Southern California, where it's just like mayhem and traffic, like and all
Yep.
stuff. Man, you talk about a fan base that wants to get moving. And did they go out and get the big fish? Well, I don't think there was a big fish this year. I really don't. So you got to go on hope. But they got the best of the best that you could get. And that game the other night when they walked off like LA, I think.
Well, first of all, Johnny, I was at that game. I was at that game.
When
Yes,
LA
I was
scored
at
5 in the first.
Dodgers gave up 5 in the first, and there was like all this lull in the stadium, right? I had Padres fans around me. They were bummed. And then they slowly started chipping away. There was some excitement.
Yep.
And then that 9th inning, when they tied it, it's been so long since I've been personally a part of that kind of baseball atmosphere.
Yeah.
And just feeling the electricity of that crowd. And again, granted, it's against one of their biggest rivals, obviously. But to be a part of that kind of crowd and see, like you said, that city rally around their team, it's really cool and it's really exciting.
Yeah. And I looked at it as like, I'd say the past, like literally 3 years, like San Diego hasn't won that game.
Exactly.
San Diego has not. And that was like, finally, like we're tired of getting our lunch money stolen.
Yep.
We're down 5. We're in the first. We're not mailing it in. We're fighting back. We're chipping. We just got to get into extras. Boom. And you look back on it, I mean, that is a momentum swing of a game. And
then they come back the next night and put up, I believe, 6 on Kershaw.
Yeah, Kershaw with Dylan Cease. Yeah.
Dylan Cease. Yep.
Yeah.
So
they're looking good, and they don't even have Darvish. We'll see if Darvish comes back.
Yep.
But and then I'll tell you, there's like 3 guys right now that are in the playoff that I look at, and they're like first 3 quarters of the season tricked ya, and that's Paul Goldschmidt. Just tricked ya.
Yep.
On the other side, Nolan Arenado, like, oh, y'all gave up on me. And then Manny. Manny's always like, kind of like right here.
Yep.
But he can freaking take off. He can hit 15 in a month. He can do all that. So, they can rally around Manny for sure.
Well, and Manny was, he was one of the big home run hitters in that 9th inning. He was the one that put them into, now down only 1 run.
Yep.
So, and his presence at the plate, there's certain guys that just have a presence, as we both know, right?
Yep.
And Manny Machado is that guy. He has that star power, and you feel it every single time he's up to bat that he could potentially do something.
Yeah.
And he did. So, and I agree with you. And, back to Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, agreed. Everyone thought, oh man, these guys, is their prime gone? Is this, Is this the end of an era here? And like you said, guess what?
Yep.
And those two guys on your Cardinal team,
Yeah.
you know, with those two anchors and that veteran presence, Cardinals can be just as lethal as any team in the NL right now.
Absolutely. And they don't even really have to get hot. They just have to just cruise, I think, the rest of the way. But if Goldschmidt and Arenado want to get hot, go for it, right? Tommy Pham behind, go for it. Now, Win at shortstop, go for it. That's how they got their last, titles, was wild card. Got in the wild card, just backdoored all the way in.
Yep. Yeah. And honestly, that's all you have to do is just get in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen this before. We saw with Arizona last year. Arizona, again, that's a sneaky team that also had a pretty nice deadline that has emerged into hitting home runs, scoring. If they can continue getting their pitching healthy and together, that is a team to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I tell you, as we're talking about, like in the NL Central, I'm sure like Pat Murphy's like, yes, please don't talk about us. Just keep going under the radar. The Milwaukee Brewers, right? I mean,
another one.
They almost got as many wins as Philly, right? I mean, they're like win-loss. They're like the best in the National League. There really wasn't a bat out there, again, to help with Yelich going down. So you're just going to have to get something within. But, yeah, don't sleep on Milwaukee too, by the way.
And I completely agree. I mean, that is a team that has really they really haven't. They've slumped a little bit here and there, but they've been pretty consistent, along with, the Cleveland Guardians as well. The Cleveland Guardians have consistently just been right where they needed to be, losing games here and there, but then bouncing right back.
Yeah.
And again, it helps when you have good pitching. Good pitching. So, and I feel like both those teams have that right now moving forward.
Yeah, and you look at those two managers too, right? With Pat Murphy and Stephen Vogt.
Yep.
Like you haven't even seen them, right? You haven't seen this like crazy blow up, or you haven't seen them like, hey, we're good, give us respect. I've got not zero quotes from Pat Murphy and Stephen Vogt about stirring it up or you guys didn't believe in us and now look what we're doing. Like, they're just like under the radar and being as pro as it can get.
And I think, and those two guys too, you have Stephen Vogt, who's this young, up and coming new manager, first timer. And then you have Pat Murphy, this old timer, older guy. You look at him, he's got that scowl on his face constantly. But they're both humming along nicely with their two new teams.
Yeah.
And again, I do think that Terry Francona set up that Guardians team nicely, but I don't want to take away the fact that Stephen Vogt has done a very nice job. And I think, to your point, keeping those guys leveled, keeping them right where they need to be, being so close to being in the major leagues. He wasn't that long ago. He was playing alongside a lot of those guys. So I do think that makes a difference. But yeah, Pat Murphy, Stephen Vogt, hell of a job in the National League and the American League. Very impressive.
Yeah, they're nailing it right now. And we're into August, right? So we got 2 more months of action. And August, of course, is the post-trade deadline, but the waiver wire.
That's right.
And I think we have to go look at San Francisco for that waiver wire. And I would not be surprised if Snell and Chapman end up on that waiver wire.
Fully agree. Because I was a little shocked that Snell was not moved.
Yep.
But I think, to your point, that he could be a really important waiver acquisition for a team, because that's a guy, I know he struggled, but that's a guy that's, again, been there, done that. He's a veteran. He's pitched in big games. He knows how to win. He's definitely going to help a playoff team down the line here. I have no doubt.
Yeah, and that waiver wire, right? So it starts at the bottom and moves its way up. Not everybody has a crack at it, right? So you pass on it. So it's going to be that team that is like 1 or 2 games out, of the wild card. It's not going to be that first place team that gets him. So he's going to move the needle. We'll see if Chapman goes too as well. But yeah, so we do have another little fake, trade deadline coming up.
It's a very good point, and that is something to pay attention to as well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this wouldn't be Pitch and Moan without us pitching and moaning, right?
Yeah.
So this is very near and dear to me, so I'm excited to get your information, your knowledge, your player expertise here. My beloved Chicago White Sox, right? 27-84, 17-game losing streak, completely fumbled the deadline and then some. They just cannot do anything right now. And I look at how they approach the deadline, and I'm hearing different things here and there now about how they went about trading Eric Fetty. Eric Fetty is this veteran, 30 years old, had a hell of a season with the Sox, which is saying something in itself. And it has now come out that Chris Getz was so hesitant to trade within his division for reasons only he knows in his own minds, because what? The Sox are going to play against him, once every 5 days on the Twins? And he has a year and a half left on his deal. I don't understand this mentality. It's once again bad business. It's a guy that's clearly over his head in Chris Getz, and the whole Garrett Crochet situation, and then Chris Getz throwing him under the bus with how he went about the trade deadline. This is a team that is just a mess. And as a former player, I don't think you've played on a team that's been this bad, but you've certainly played on teams that have gone through winning streaks and losing streaks. What to you is the hardest to accomplish? This type of losing streak or a winning streak like, let's say, the A's have had in the past? What is the hardest for you?
Yeah, so they're sitting at 17 straight losses, also a 14-loss streak during the season. The 2002 A's won 20 in a row. The 2017 Guardians won 17 in a row. So what's harder, right? I'd always go down like our starting five and be like, can all five guys in our starting five lay an egg? Meaning you get a 5-game losing streak. Right, that's a lot when your whole starting rotation loses, right? Or even out of the bullpen. So they're on like their fourth. They're going into 20. So that's their starting five getting like 3 starts and going on their fourth of losing. That's really hard, right? That's really hard, especially with Eric that they have that left and Crochet. You tell me Crochet can't go like 8 innings, 2 hits, 0 runs, and someone like Sheets or Vaughn hits a solo home run and you get a win? Like nowhere. It's hard to do what they're doing.
You can accidentally run into a win in the exact same way you described, right? Yeah. And the fact that this hasn't happened and it's unprecedented losing, I don't know what the answer is. And I don't know how it gets better. I mean, there's all this rumblings about firing Pedro Grifol. And yes, I agree with that because I am a believer in accountability, that this is the guy who is the face of the Sox as the manager. And sometimes you got to go down with the ship, whether it's right, wrong, or in between. Sometimes you got to be the fall guy. But that's not going to make any difference. This is a team that is lost. And the fact that they continue to lose in these different ways every single night, like you just said, it is almost impossible to do that. It is hard to be this bad.
Yeah, and I was with their game the other last Wednesday when they played the Royals, called the game, and like the wrap up of the game was like, wow, Bobby Witt is an absolute dude. Like you just get excited, right, to watch him come up. Like what's gonna happen? Like he walks and you're like, oh, 2 stolen bases. This is gonna be great.
Literally.
hits a homer, plays defense. He's great. And the Royals are really good. And then on the other side, I was just like, I honestly don't know when the White Sox are just going to win another game. Right. They got beat at every single aspect of the game with no individual highlights. Right. Like their defense was kind of like in different spots. They had a couple ground balls up the middle. They had some ground balls beat like in the 5-hole where they had their third baseman over and it should have been on the other side. They got beat down the line on a double when you should have been guarding the line. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they do get to 20. So you have the 0-2 A's win streak, and then you have the 14 or the 24 losing streak, both at 20.
I mean, it would be a cherry on top to this wonderful season the Southsiders are having. But really quick, a question for you as a former player, and you were observing that game, and you saw how their defense was getting beat. To you, where do you see that problem lying? Is it in the coaching? Is it the players that they have? Is it a combination of both? What do you see there?
This day and age, and it's like, okay, but these guys are like robots because you have a lot of trust in your analytical department. It's one of the biggest departments in all 30 major league orgs. So what do? You go in your back pocket and you pull out the card, and it says 2 steps to the left, 2 steps in. It says play in the hole. It says guard the line. Whatever it is, you have to honor, right? So, yeah, they were not standing in the right place, at least on that game. And then to be able to go where they are right now, you could argue that. So, I mean, it's not just the players. It's not the coaches. I mean, you got to get up in that analytical department as well.
Well, and the Sox are known to have one of the lesser analytic departments. So that's an interesting call out. And I'm certainly not surprised to hear that. So, it's a team that is, like I said, they're a lost team. They're a lost cause. I don't know what the solution is here. They need a lot of work. But to see them literally fumble the trade deadline just again was the cherry on top to this horrific 2024 season. So,
well, and would it be known too, like who came on as a guest was like Paul Konerko. And so which sends me to like the history of the White Sox, right? Like the statues in the outfield. I was saying there's probably just as many statues in the outfield as the White Sox in Detroit, like the most like ever. Like the White Sox rock. Man, I mean, that whiteout that they have and the blackout that they have. People are like we're bashing on them like this year, but like, please turn it around. Please go back to the drawing board. When the Southside and North Side are battling each other, that's great for the game.
And that's what I mean.
Yeah, it's not good for the game to have a team this far down.
The White Sox are a charter franchise. They're not a team in no offense to the Rockies, but we have a lot of history here, right? Like this is a charter franchise. This is the third largest market in the country. This team should not be allowed to be this bad. Like you said, it's bad for baseball. It's the crowd will show up, the fans will show up. We want to show up, but we got to have something to cheer for because this is bad. This is bad.
Yeah.
So I feel like we solved a lot of problems as we always do, Johnny.
Yes.
Fun conversation. We have a lot to pay attention to in these last 2 months here. And let's reconvene and see what team has hope after these acquisitions have settled in, and we will see where we end up in a few weeks here.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too watching these Cy Young races. I mean, is Paul Skeens really going to win the Cy Young? Really might. Right? Like his odds, I think right now are like plus 170, which is absolutely ridiculous at 9 starts into his big league career. You got Ozuna right now. I think I mentioned last time with Aaron Judge in the Triple Crown. It's kind of fallen off a little bit with Bobby Witt hitting 350. But Ozuna and, over there in Atlanta is making a push for that Triple Crown. So, yeah, a lot of stats to watch out too. And we'll see. Like I mentioned, too, watch out for that team that cut the fat and was sellers. That's going to go ahead and win a bunch of games these last 2 months.
No doubt. And, we can pay attention to the NL wild card, too. Like I said, 5, 6, 7 teams that are bunched in there. We will start to see in the next few weeks who kind of breaks apart. I picture a Padres doing that, certainly. And Arizona sneaking in there now and officially being aggressive. There's a lot to pay attention to in these last 2 months, and I'm looking forward to always breaking it down with you as we do, pitching and moaning.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep it going.
I always appreciate you, Johnny. Nice talking to you.